That means that the IRS will ask you to fill out a financial form. And if you can show that your debts, that your income coming in is great or is less than all of the expenses that you're paying out, then they will put you in uncollectible status and shut down all collection activity against you. And it's a temporary status. That's why an offer in compromise is a lot of times a better option, because it's a long-term remedy. But the currently uncollectible status comes up once a year, and you have to file that financial form every year to stay in the status. That can be helpful, though, because your tax debt with the IRS, unless it's reduced to a judgment, only lasts for 10 years. So you can stay in uncollectible status for 10 years, or if it's 10 years from the date they assess the debt against you. And that's different from the 10 years from the date that you filed. But you can basically wait out your debt, and then after 10 years, the debt will go away, so long as they choose not to file an action against you in federal court. And for a lot of people, that doesn't happen because the administrative cost of filing an action against you is so great. And the IRS also has to convince the Department of Justice to do that. So there's a bureaucratic step into doing that. So a lot of people will go into uncollectible status and run out their debts. Other people will choose to file an offer in compromise and compromise their debts and immediately remove that debt from the IRS's books. The other option that you have if you owe the IRS money is to go into a payment plan. And there are what's called streamlined payment plans now that the IRS has to place you in. So basically the idea is that if you can take your original assessment, and that's without the interest and penalties, and you divide that by 72, if you can pay, and whatever that amount is, if you can pay that over 72 months, the IRS will place you in a payment plan and stop any collection activity against you. That means levying your bank accounts. They'll stop garnishing your wages. If you can do that plus go into a direct debit installment plan, the IRS will withdraw any tax liens that's been filed against you. And on the form, there's a withdrawal form, and the tax clinic can help you do this. If you call 942-8241, that's Pine Tree's Bangor office that services the entire state for tax problems. You can actually request that the IRS notify the collection agencies. And what's great about a lien withdrawal is that once it's granted, the collection agencies will take any notation of your tax debt immediately off of your credit, which should at least give you a 100-point bump in your FICO score. So a payment plan may be another option for you, because there are times when you don't qualify for an offer in compromise, or you don't qualify for currently uncollectible status, but perhaps paying the debt off over 72 months is your best option. Finally, the other assistance that we provide in the clinic is if you can get to us after the exam, but before 90 days after the debt has been assessed against you, we also file claims in tax court. So we'll assist people with tax court litigation. So if you receive what's called a notice of deficiency, and you'll know that because it says right on the top of the form, notice of deficiency. If you receive that formal notice, and you'll know that you've received it because you've actually had to sign for it with certified mail. If you receive a notice of deficiency from the IRS and you qualify for our services, you should call us at 942-8241, and we'll help you respond to that and use the United States Tax Court as a venue to resolve to potentially help you resolve your tax debt. So those are the things that we do. We help with examinations, we help with collections, and we help with tax court litigation. And remember, but what we don't help with is current tax return filings. In order to get assistance for current tax return filings, you have to call 211 and ask for the free tax preparation service near you. And by the way, and I didn't mention this before, it's only in operation through April. So the sooner you call, the better. Because it's a temporary, they start up in January and they end right around April 15th. So let me move this here. So basically the ending, I've got some time for questions. And do you want to do questions now? Okay. So does anyone have any questions? There's no one here.
So I have a question. What if you haven't filed for like 3 years or 4 years, what should you do then?
Sure. So what do I do if I haven't filed? Should you be scared? Like, so you're terrified, right? Well, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to come into compliance. Because the IRS has a system. You've received a W-2, most likely. Is that what you've received? Well, if you don't file your tax return, the IRS will file it for you, which basically means that they'll issue what's called a substitute for return. Do you have withholdings on your tax return? Did you pay in?
Probably.
Yeah. Well, if the IRS files a substitute for return for you, they won't use the withholdings to minimize your tax liability. They'll give you your one exemption, and that's about it. And so it's in your benefit to file because you'll probably minimize your tax liability. And if you file within 3 years, you should get your refund back. So that's the first question. You always are in a better position to owe the IRS, to file and owe money, and then come into compliance with a repayment or an offer in compromise. Now, what people are generally afraid of is will they send me to jail? And that's always a good question because you actually it's a crime to not file your tax return. It's a crime to not keep proper tax records. It's a crime, and it's a crime not to file to not file the return. It's also a crime not to pay your tax. So that's really scary because you've technically, if you don't file, you could potentially commit a tax crime. But at the same time, the IRS is very interested in collecting tax and to getting you into compliance. And so they generally, if it's a one-time deal, I mean, I can't speak for every situation. But what they seem to be more interested in is getting you into compliance, bringing you up to speed, and making either some sort of repayment or getting some sort of collection remedy like we talked about. So it's always in your benefit, and that's the thing. If you haven't filed your tax returns and you have a debt that's been assessed against you, you can call us at the tax clinic, and we'll help you deal with that.
What if you don't have a W-2? If you're self-employed and you haven't filed, is that worse?
Well, you can owe more taxes because if you're a 1099 employee, an independent contractor, you have to pay your FICA taxes, your Social Security, and your Medicare taxes. But what we can do, a lot of employers actually, especially if it's a past employer who you don't work for anymore, a lot of employers will misclassify employees as independent contractors so they don't have to pay their FICA taxes. So one of the other things we do in helping people is we help submit what's called an SS8 application, where we get them reclassified as employees instead of independent contractors. And what that does is that cuts in half your FICA taxes. But say you are an independent contractor, you're going to owe more money. But at the same, because you probably have what they call self-employment tax. But at the same time, you want to come into compliance, and all of the remedies that I've talked about and how we assist you basically is exactly the same. What happens though is, say you don't have your tax records, we can help you pull those records because when your employer sends you a 1099 or a W-2, they also send it to the IRS. So I can call the IRS and access it either online or through the phone and fax and get your employment records. You can also get copies of your employment records. It's called a wage and income transcript. If you go to your local IRS walk-in center and ask them for a printout of your wage and income transcript for whatever year. You can also go and receive a printout of your tax return transcript for the last 3 years if you've lost your tax return. You can also get printouts for your general accounts. Say you think you may owe money to the IRS, but you've moved and they haven't caught up with you yet mailing-wise, you can go in and ask for a printout of your account transcripts too, just to see if you owe them money. And the last thing is, it's always great to file because once you've filed, there's generally, and again, this is why it's so important to either talk to the clinic on a one-on-one basis or to talk to an accountant or to call 211 while you're doing to get free tax prep. But generally, once you file your tax return, the IRS has only 3 years to assess against you, to challenge your return. After that's run, unless you've committed fraud or the understatement is significant, then they can't come back and reassess. So even if you haven't made any money, you can file what's called a zero return and submit it to the IRS. And 3 years later, once they've accepted the filing from the date of filing, you can kind of sleep safe and know that they can't come back and assess against you.
So even if you make not enough money to really have to file your taxes, it's good to file them anyway?
Some people, I think, it's helpful to them. Now, the difference is that if you don't have a filing requirement, and the filing requirements differ depending on what your age is, what your filing status is. But if you don't have a filing requirement, then VITA, the free tax preparation service, won't assist you. They generally, unless they can handle the volume during that day, they're generally not allowed to assist people who don't have a filing requirement. But one of the jokes, and that's actually true, as we always say, is that sometimes in order to convince the IRS that you don't have a filing requirement, you actually have to file a tax return. So, is that okay? So our transmission time is up, and I want to thank the participating libraries and everyone who's attended this session. Again, please make sure that you signed in and that you fill out the evaluation forms. Again, your library has information on how to find more legal resources in your area. If you need more information or want to seek legal assistance, please go to helpmelaw.org, where you can search for legal information and legal resources in Maine and your county or town.